A more contemporary example, of course, is the use of the internet. Who could have imagined that it would create the groundswell that it has? With traditional research, we never could have anticipated that or seen it in the data. With Cascade, we can. Let's talk a little bit about the elements of Cascade. There are three. The first is the qualitative, and the other two are the quantitative dimensions of it. The qualitative side, most of you have probably filled out surveys where you're asked to answer an open-ended question. And our method is not dissimilar from that. As you can see here, here's a sample of an open-ended question that asks a little bit about attitudes about reactions to the information technology industry. A difference, however, in what we do is probe the question after someone has asked the question the first time. So in this instance, after they've answered, we will say anything else or what else. What we have learned by doing this research is that people answer the first pass in a rational way, whereas they answer the second pass in a more emotional way. It's the emotional response that actually gives us more information about how they buy or why they buy. So if you look at the results of the data on that first question, you can see in the left-hand column that people were giving answers of quality and customer orientation and solution orientation as their rational answers. But if you look over on the probe, innovation pops up as the number one factor. What we do with the data is plot it in what's called semantic space so that you can look at it from the rational to the emotional, going from the left to the right, and whether in the context of what they're saying it's positive or negative. In this particular slide, you will see that indeed quality is way up in the left-hand corner. Now that doesn't mean that you would dismiss the notion of quality, but if you go up into the right-hand corner, you'll see that innovation and integrity are the emotional answers that give you much more flexibility for how to position and differentiate against those companies that are all talking to the same issues of quality. You can also see in the lower quadrants, for example, keep promises. Now, in the context of the data, what people were saying was, I wish those darn companies would keep their promises. So we can counsel a company not to use a message like that because it would be an albatross, it would be suspect. People would say, I think that would cause more concern on the part of a company that maybe they were emphasizing the negative for a reason that would enhance the suspicion factor. It also gives people an opportunity for how to do their copywriting. So we create strings of words that support other themes. So if you were looking at a theme around customer orientation, for example, you could know that the way people talk about customer orientation involves three themes around responsiveness, aggressiveness, and solution orientation. It allows a copywriter a very quick way to write some pithy paragraphs that play along the lines of the way the customer already thinks. The qualitative advantages with this kind of market research is that it allows you to get to what the emotional triggers are in a more profound and precise way. It also allows us to take a look at what might be latent needs as opposed to implied needs. It gives us a chance to get to what the customer's really thinking about, even though their rational answers don't indicate it. It gives us a quick way to find the language that the customer uses and align the way to introduce products and services using their language. And there's never a time when we've done these studies that we haven't discovered some surprise, some persnickety idea or variable that we can use that just matches what the customers are thinking about or worried about in a way that builds their allegiance. They can say, this company actually understands what I need or how I think. Now, the next two parts are the more quantitative side, and we'll talk about fractionation first. To do that, we have to talk about scaling. And in the opportunities for scales, there are four. nominal, ordinal, interval, and ratio. They are increasingly more precise as we go. Nominal is it's the beginning of a scale. Here you can see shirts on the team here, and they're thrown out. And if on the first day of tryouts everyone got a shirt, and I were then to say, all of you with even numbers stand on one side of the room and all of you with odd numbers stand on the other side of the room, there's not a lot of conclusions we could draw from that. That notwithstanding, it is a good place to start for tracking the events over the course of a season. We can at least know what's happening with 21 and what's happening with player 25. Ordinal is the next level of increased value for scaling. It gives you order. It can tell you what came in first, what came in second, what came in third. Now, there are limitations with an ordinal scale, and one of my colleagues likes to describe those limitations on the basis of his first mile race that he ran in Bedford, Massachusetts on May 6, 1954. He ran it in 5 minutes and 11 seconds, which was at the time a pretty good feat, although it's no mean feat today compared to what most people do. In fact, the Boston Marathon, most people run every mile of it faster than that. But it happened to be on that day that while my colleague was running his race, it was across the world in England that Roger Bannister ran the same mile race and broke the 4-minute mile barrier. Now, my colleague would like the performance that he and Roger Bannister did on that same day rated on an ordinal scale, because if, in fact, that were done, they would have had the same results. Ranked first, mile race, that day. The fact that Roger Bannister would have lapped him around the track, which is quite a feat, would be completely missed in the data, hence the limitation of an ordinal scale. An interval scale gives us more precision for our trouble. It gives us order, as does the ordinal scale, but it also gives us increments of distance that we can measure. We can all agree that the distance between first base and second base, or third base and home, is 90 feet. So the increments of distance are equal. The highest performance scale is a ratio scale. It starts from a true zero. It has increments of distance. The amounts of those distance are consistent, but it adds 2 dimensions. It is also infinitely dense, and it's infinite. No matter what 2 numbers I give you, I can put a number between them. Between 4 and 5 is 4.5. If I give you 7, I can give you 8. The results of that is that it's a much more precise scale for anyone who would like to distinguish in more fine ways what they're talking about from one factor to another.